Today I'm gonna finally do something I've wanted for years and I've never done. And it's probably surprising considering I'm considered like the water cooling guy in the PC tech industry, that I don't have a lot of water cooling laying around. Like in fact, it's the most disorganized, discombobulated, f***ed up, can't find when I'm looking for it category we got around here. So today I'm gonna take all of that pile of and see if I can't turn it into something useful. Whether you're gaming on the go, working remotely, or setting up a second screen at home, Viewsonic's portable gaming monitors let you play anywhere, anytime, without sacrificing performance. Meet the VX1654 and the VX1754. Ultra slim, ultra light, and built for gamers who want desktop level power in their backpack. At just 0.7 inches thin, these displays slip into any bag, making them perfect for travel, LAN parties, or creators on the move. And you're getting 144 Hz refresh rate, buttery smooth motion, and AMD FreeSync for tear-free gameplay. And the best part, one cable, a single USB-C handles your power, data, video, and audio. No clutter, no dongles, and no stress. They work with laptops, tablets, phones, and of course your consoles. Switch, PS5, Xbox, you name it. Plus the built-in kickstand cover protects your screen and lets you set up in landscape or portrait wherever you're posted up. Need more than gaming? Well, Viewsonic's full portable lineup includes OLED models, touchscreen options, and even built-in batteries, giving you flexibility to work and play from literally anywhere. Upgrade your mobile setup with the Viewsonic Portable Gaming Series, performance that travels with you. Learn more by clicking the link in the description below. So I'm referring to my dedicated water cooling station. Like I wanted, as I've been trying to do more in-depth type of content, giving you guys more than just very surface, like mantle crust layer of information, I haven't been able to do that when it comes to like dedicated open water loop stuff. I've been able to do it with AIOs and air coolers and all that stuff. And it's the same logic when it comes to water cooling parts. It's just water cooling is much more labor intensive when it comes to the teardown and setup. So that's why I reached out to Performance PCs and asked them for help with these quick disconnects or couplers. These are fucking expensive. Phil, they sell them. Now this isn't Performance PC's problem. These are Coolants. Coolants have been around for decades. They sell them in halves. So if you need, you have to buy a male end, and a female end. Now we have a coupler baby. But anyway, how much do you think each half is?
The way you're talking about it, I'll say $40 a half.
About that, yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, so each one of these is like almost $80. And as you can see, I don't have a lot of them. So here's the thing. I've got to account for a CPU loop and a GPU loop. Well, I would love to have them be ideally separate loops, that way the CPU is independent for the GPU, but I'm never gonna be testing them together at the same time. So if I'm doing, say, a GPU block test, right? The CPU has to do something, obviously, when we're running our test, but it's very low load. So we are gonna be putting so much Radiator. We're not gonna be doing 560s, which this would fit, but we're gonna be putting so much Radiator in here that it's the like 60 to 100 watts that the CPU might pull while gaming will be nothing compared to what the GPUs pull these days. So for radiators, I'm reusing the old Skunkworks rads, actually. These are the radiators that came out of Skunkworks back when I did the whole like, screw EK, we're boycotting you, and then I'm like, wait, I can still honor the employees that designed this stuff. It's management that was the problem, not the engineers or the employees. So I've got a 560 and a 280. That's a lot of radiator. I would love to do two 560s, but I don't have another 560. But this is a lot of linear cooling. It is probably capable of cooling well over 1500 watts of heat, okay? Not only that, because it's going in a dedicated radiator box, it's not gonna have any sort of case influence. So it's going to be just fine when it comes to being able to cool either a GPU or a CPU. And the hottest it would ever have to cool would be, I guess, potentially like a 5090 Matrix, which is like an 800 watt graphics card, if you're using BTF and all that. But because I'm not using a BTF board, and I'm not gonna mod it, it would never pull that kind of wattage. So let's say 600 to 630 watts if we do a little overclock on like a 5090, is about the most we'd ever have to cool. This is way more than enough. Given the fact that I have two 420s in my rig currently, and the fact that my GPU, my 5090, with the case involvement, like reducing some of that airflow through the case, my 5090 at home, since I did that build, never gets out of like the mid 40s under load in a much warmer environment than what's in here. So essentially that's what I have right here, is two 420s, right? A 1, 2, 3, and a 1, 2, 3. So I have plenty of cooling. What I'm gonna have to do, I've got two, these are the AlphaCool VPP655T pumps. They are not the most robust or durable pumps. They may fail on me. They're not true D5s, they're like D5 clones, but they're the only two pumps I have right now that are manual speed. You might be asking yourself, why do you have two pumps if you're not doing two loops? Well, because this rad box is a dual pump loop. And that's just to make sure it's overcoming it. If you could put a ton of rad in here, you've got to overcome all that resistance. So dual pumps is what this requires. I can't bypass one of those pumps, so I have to run two. And I don't want to run PWM because I want full manual control over everything. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna pull the half of this apart. Remember, this is essentially two of them put together. I could just keep stacking them as big as I wanted. I could make a server rack size of it if I wanted. That is really, really overkill. So what do you think, Phil? My OCD was what was making me go with the 280 because then they'll both match, but I could go with a 420 because I still have one of the XR5 420s that I didn't use from my latest build for even more cooling.
I'm kind of with you on your OCD too.
Yeah.
It's a buggy.
Not only that, this is a brand new unused rad, which you can use in another build, right? So, and then I still have these three XR7 super thick rads, but I only have this cooling box, which supports 140 fans, or the other one, which only supports two 240 millimeter radiators, which is not enough for this. Because here's what we need to do. We need to oversize the loop in terms of its cooling capability to remove the radiator as being the limiting factor on how cold the component can get. If we're testing, say, a CPU block or a GPU block, we need the transfer rate and the flow rate of the block to be our bottleneck. So that's what we're measuring is the bottleneck here. Okay, well, I also have, because I want full manual control, I've got this guy here, which was the cheap fan controller I got off Amazon that has a dial so I can control fan speeds. That'll stay perfectly locked down. It gets fed through SATA power, so it's not gonna be influenced by the motherboard at all. And then of course I've got fan splitters. I can have one of these go to the 280, and then I can have another two channels go over, oh, not even channels, it's all single channel, but I can have two of these ports go over to the other block. The only thing that's kind of, so here's the thing, this is not gonna be aesthetically pleasing. This is function over form. Like things are literally gonna be taped to the outside. Like this is gonna be like taped to the outside and crap, so I can easily adjust it and stuff. All right, let me start by tearing half of this off. Done. They literally just connect together here. So they just keep going side by side. I might use the bench table. I'm not sure. I wanna see if that has a place to mount the power supply. If not, then I'll end up going with our open bench table. I think it's Open Labs. I can't remember what that's called. I feel bad for not remembering the brand name, but I've spent a lot of money on these. I paid for all of these and nothing was sent for review. Okay, so this is our rad box now. Much more manageable. I kind of feel like I might have Nick 3D print some taller feet because there is ventilation on the bottom. But what I'm thinking about doing here is going all intake. That way it's all just fresh air coming in, because what we don't want is any sort of like, I don't want one rad warming up another rad. So if I have the 560 bringing in hot air, right, or it'd be warming the air as it comes through it, then we can reduce the efficiency of our 280 because of the fact that it's gonna be having a warmer ambient air to start. So its thermal capacity will be somewhat absorbing the heat from the other rad from the air rather than the heat of the component which we wanna remove. So I could go all exhaust on the 560 blowing air out, have two inlets or intake fans for the rad, and then two fresh air intake fans for the 560. But I think honestly, just going all positive pressure will be fine. And then I could potentially even remove these dust filters and it would just exhaust out the top. Like again, these pretty dust filters and stuff, they're neat, but totally unnecessary for what we're doing. So I've got options here. For fans, I bought these on Amazon. They're not expensive. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 per box. Okay, so these are the Arctic, these are Arctic fans. Very static pressure-y. I can't verify it, but if we look at the static pressure on here, 5.2 millimeters H2O. That's a lot, because a lot of fans are only really boasting something like 2 to 3, and they're kind of daisy chainable, which I guess would be nice now and means the whole thing I was trying to do with the splitters wouldn't be necessary, but whatever. But yeah, this is definitely a more optimized airflow, pressure with airflow secondary design. The blades don't fully overlap. If we wanted to go true static pressure, the blades would overlap entirely, but it's kind of a good middle ground. Let's just start with the rad box because platform is gonna be separate. So I also got this PrimaFlex Advanced LRT in black, not clear. So here's the thing, I'm doing soft tubing for obvious reasons. We need flexibility to move it around and stuff. I only went with black because all soft tubing is gonna leach plasticizer eventually, which is why your tubing turns yellowy and cloudy looking instead of that nice clear. The black has plasticizer in it too. Any soft tubing has plasticizer in it. That's how it stays soft. Even your tires have plasticizer in them. If you've ever wondered, like if you've parked your car and say you have a performance car with like a R compound or a soft compound tire and you park it on an epoxy floor and you notice yellow spots where your tires are, that's actually the plasticizer transferring from your tire to the floor and then it discolors the epoxy. There's a reason why I know that. Anyway, this is just so that it doesn't show. Because it's thin wall, as long as I don't make sure it doesn't kink like that, we'll be good to go. But I got 2 boxes of this, it should be plenty. So anyway, that pump feeds this pump and it goes out right here. Now I can choose to go from here to a radiator and then to another radiator and then out. So I have to figure out how I'm gonna go from out in here to rad and then back out, which I can technically use one of these fittings as a pass through, right? The return, whoops. The return, yeah, until, I need to make sure the 280 is obviously in the bottom. And then I might put a little ballast weight down here because it's, yeah, it's a little narrow. So we've got our outs here. This is so I can, 3D printed? Yep, TPU 3D printed. Anyway, this is so that I can pass wires through for like fans and all that sort of stuff. All right, let me get this all plumbed up and then we'll figure out what the hell I did. Remember what I said, function over form. That's exactly what this is. Okay, so I got both pumps in there, both rads in there. I did 2 exhaust fans at the top. I might switch another 560 in here later, but that would be before I do any reviews or anything like data, because if I change the rad setup, it does potentially change temperatures. But, so here's the flow, right? It goes from reservoir into here, this pump into this pump out into the top of the 280 rad, out of the top of the 280 rad, ports up to get air out, into the top of the 560, down through the 560, up to the top again, just to move the air, and then out, right? So what I need to do right now, and I didn't do bulkhead fittings because I only had 1, but this is fine too. I had grommets, which were the perfect size. So this gives me a little bit of play too. So if I yank on it, it's not gonna like pop out of the compression fitting or anything. But I need to do this because it's gonna be important to make sure I have the flow directions correct, right? So I'm gonna do, maybe I'll do it here. Yes, we'll do this. This is not something I think you would have to do for your own loop, but this is important for this test loop here. So this is out. So I'm just gonna make an arrow showing the direction the flow is going, right? That way I make sure I do everything correctly. Because if I'm trying to use this to do reviews on, I owe it to everyone involved to do it right. And flow direction absolutely matters in blocks because the blocks are designed with a certain flow in mind. So I need to make sure that everything is flowing the correct direction. So this is the return. No matter what, I can see the correct direction. All right, so then that would go out to GPU, CPU, potentially both, whatever. From those parts back to here, inlet into the bottom right there, and then flows back up and through. And then what I need to do still, which I haven't done yet, and I'll do it now, is this is going to be my drain right here. You know what? I don't really need to do that, now that I think about it, because if I wanted to do a drain, these are my drains. And I could just take the other end, right? And into the sink. So I don't think I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna leave that capped off right there. Worst case scenario, I just pop the end off, right? And it would drain into the sink. So I'm just gonna leave that actually. That just seems like having a drain hanging off like this with acrylic seems like an opportunity to smack it and then crack the acrylic and then I'm fucked, right? And I don't want that. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fill this up independently because this will just complete the loop like that. Now the loop is complete. So that can be its own standalone, separate from everything else. It'll fill, oh, I just put the thing away, didn't I? It'll fill from the top right here. It's gonna take a lot of fluid and a lot of, okay, but what I also needed to show you too is I ended up putting my own power supply in here because I don't want to have this dedicated on the test station here, because here's what I'm thinking. I need to be able to test both Intel and AMD, I think. I think AMD right now is more prevalent, even for water cooling. I'm seeing a lot more AMD stuff, but I need to be able to potentially test both. So I don't want to have all the wiring and stuff going into the test, the motherboard setup here. So I used a 650 watt, because it's the smallest SFX power supply I have, EVGA gold rated power supply with a jumper on it, just running to its own cable right now. So technically if you plug this in, the pumps and fans should go. Wait, I think I turned it off. Can I? Shit. Yeah, there it goes. Pumps are dry, so I really don't want to run them long. But before I do that, and I do have an acrylic piece that'll go on right here, what I'm probably gonna do is, that's gonna be my test station over there. It's got a power strip on the back that I can just plug this in, or I can get one of those plugs that just has a toggle on it. So I can plug it in and then toggle it on and off there without having to reach into here. Although I can, no. Ow, almost got my knuckle stuck. Okay, yeah, that's not gonna work. But I need to leak test this real quick because we need to be sure, oh my gosh. We need to be sure we have a good loop here before it just goes spraying everywhere. Yeah, see, we're not holding air right now. We have a leak somewhere. I wonder if it's in one of the pumps. Sounds like it might be. All right, it's holding pressure. As you can see, the top O-ring for the pump got unseated because I put it in vertical. So this time I laid it down flat and it held its position. So the O-ring was slightly off. But as you can see, it is holding pressure. If it'll hold, whatever that is, how many bar is that? If it'll hold a half a bar, it'll hold fluid. So now I might as well just fill this thing up because this is totally separate from the testing station. What you guys won't see in today's video is the setup of like Windows and the capture software and all that. Basically, I could clone the drive that we use for our case testing. It would be the exact same logic. But I'm doing AMD. I was gonna do a 285K from Intel because I just need something that generates heat. And we know Intel can do that, but so can like a 9950X. And I don't have a 9950X. I have a 7950X 3D and a 7950X. I don't have a 9950X, but a 7950X is the same TDP as a 9950X. So it doesn't matter if it's like the newest thing or whatever, the blocks will still mount to it and the heat will still be generated. I just need to make it locked down so that it's always giving me the same clock speeds and everything, just like our GPU rig. So I don't want any sort of fluctuation on clock speeds or any of that stuff because that will then be an inserted variable. So everything has to be completely locked down, GPU, all of that. So, but that's the thing, like it's gonna be a different GPU all the time for testing different GPU blocks and whatnot. But I have a feeling this will be more CPU block testing than GPU, which makes this very overkill rig, but whatever. I do want to test GPU blocks as well. So I'm not gonna plug this in yet. I'm going to use my squeeze bottle for about an hour to get this thing as full as possible. It's gonna suck, but I gotta do it. All right, so this is the first power on. Whoa, my God. Ah, that is so much flow. It like came back out the back hole over here. It was like in my face. The amount of air was like, holy crap, did that have a lot of flow.
Yeah.
I was like, I wonder if I can keep up with the squeeze bottle. I was like, no, I can't, because the air was coming out violently. No wonder why he has the anti-vortex like pylons like where they are. Maybe I don't need both pumps on 5. Yeah, I don't think I need them on 5. Let's just go to like, let's just go 1, sure. Let's just do that. Turning it back on speed 1. Look at that bubble. Bloop. Dude, even on 1, holy crap. So that's on 1 right there. This is neat. You can literally see the flow pattern, right? So some of the bubbles are making their way up here. The level's coming down. That'll come down as every single one of these bubbles pop eventually. But that is the pump, both pumps on 1. But let's go to both pumps on just 2. Now remember, this is gonna still have to overcome the blocks, which will add some resistance, but still, I don't think this is gonna have that much resistance. Like, these pumps can push through anything, honestly. But now let's go to 3. See, the problem is if you go too fast, then the pump can suck the bubbles back in. Let's just go 5. See, now you're not getting nearly as much of it making it to the top. Look how many of those bubbles are getting sucked right back in. Now this is the one thing you have to look out for on the thin wall tubing like this, is if you have a kink. See that? Infinite power loop. Wait, there. I mean, this is acceptable too. Anyway, moving on. So when we talk about our loop, here it is. This is the full testing rig. The drive I wanted to use has been cloned. We'll turn it on in a minute. It has to install the AMD stuff, but this is a 7950X rig. Like I already talked about why I'm gonna use that. I have 1 spare quick disconnect, which is nice. Look at the amount of force that this has. It has a lot of disc. It's very chunky. Like, its price is definitely represented in weight. Anyway, little rule of thumb, if you guys are gonna be using quick disconnects, like, you can use them in your own personal rig. Like, it makes service a lot easier. As long as you have the connectors in the same orientation along the way. So as long as every outlet going to an inlet is going from a male to a female, then you're good. And what I mean by that, in fact, I have to disconnect that anyway. The inlet on the CPU is a female. I hate the fact that it's genderized, but it is. And I didn't name this okay? The industry did. So in, female, out, male. So the outlet should always be a male and the inlet should always be a female, okay? This is not a stance. I promise. I just have to put that out there. It's 2020, almost 2026.
Yeah.
So the outlet is a male and the inlet on the GPU is a female. So as long as you keep it that way, you'll always be able to, like, if I wanted to bypass the CPU for some reason, my outlet would match the inlet of the GPU. So it doesn't matter which component it is. But the cool thing is now, as you can see, like, I could keep the CPU loop together if I wanted, right? GPU is totally out of the loop.
Literally.
Yeah, and if I wanted to, I could totally run the GPU this way. As long as the GPU doesn't go under load, if I want to do CPU testing, this would be perfectly fine. There's so much passive cooling. This is a 3090 Gaming X Trio. That's why I have PCI Express cables on here. But just to show you right now, so I already bled and ran water through the CPU. It has fluid in its tubes. You can see the level, how much it changed. It was at the top, and then it went down to there when we filled up the CPU, and then I topped it back off again. But yeah, so now our CPU is in the loop. I can turn off my pump. When you do the quick disconnect, excuse me, you only lose about a drop. See that one little drop that flew out? That's all you lose, check it out. Whee, that's 1 drop. Now I can take the inlet. Oh, also too, if you're gonna start connecting and disconnecting things, if you have a rad box like this, make sure the quick disconnect's on both tubes, because there is some pressure in the line. So if you had no quick disconnect on this end, just an open tube, and you plug that in, water will shoot out of it. So anyway, now we're going into CPU, out of the CPU to the GPU inlet, and then GPU outlet to inlet of Radbox. Now it is a full loop ready to test. Now I'm gonna turn it on and watch how much, like, we'll now know exactly how much fluid is in the lines here. In fact, that is being pinched right there, so I need to watch out for that. What was I saying? I think I twisted a little bit when I put it on. So just gotta make sure there's no pinches and watch the water level. Now it looks dramatic, but there's very little gap between this like distro plate reservoir thing. So now with it running, I can top it back off and we'll be good to go. So what I'll do is I think to end this video, I'll fire it up, get the OS going, and I'll just run a quick temperature test. And this is why you see now that why there was that, what Phil referred to off camera as what looks like broken physics, because the bottle or the bubbles are so surface tensioned to the rough surface of the machined wall of the acrylic that they don't want to let go. But you can see the 3 different levels along the way. It's kind of funny.
I was gonna say, yeah, it literally left a line every time you paused the bubble or the bubble.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So here we go. Okay, rad box is static. Same fan speed, same pump speed, nothing changed. But now, there's still some potential fluid in the GPU block. See the bubbles coming out? So this is what I would have to do to make sure before I do my test. In fact, if I go horizontal, there we go. So we should see those bubbles. There they go. Now we know how long it takes for it to go through the return line. But I would just want to make sure that I have all the air obviously out of the component before I do my testing. And that takes a minute sometimes. But now I'm going to take it over to its permanent home and I'm going to fire this up and just make sure everything's working with the OS. I ended up just going pretty basic, like I said, 7950X CPU. I'll probably do, gosh, most people like to undervolt AMD, but I'm not going to. I'm going to make sure it pulls the full like 200 and something watts that it can pull on full load. It's 180 watt CPU, 170 watt, 180 watt, somewhere around there. But I want to generate some heat, right? But yeah, it doesn't matter what CPU we use as long as it's making a heat load. Just grabbed a basic Crucial set, rip, whatever. I mean, it's still usable, right? Even though Micron's doing some bullshit stuff. And the drive is in there, and other than that, that's the full, it's just a fun little chunk of thing. Now what's cool about this is when it's time to transport, oh, okay, make sure it goes. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't do that over the system. But anyway, now it's fully contained. Look at that, boom. That's kind of cool looking though, if you wanted an industrial look to your loop. Adds a lot of cost though. Like I said, function over form. This is where having that toggle switch I talked about would be nice, because I'm just gonna plug in right here and I could just toggle it on and off. Right now I have to plug it in. But I need to make sure, kind of like old school drag racers have a manual water pump switch for electric water pumps, and then they have like a sticker on their dash that says turn on water, stupid. I need one of those like on the monitor. Turn on water, stupid, because I can now turn this on and have literally no water flow. And we don't want that. So let's turn that on. We've got power. Turn on the rad box first. There we go. And turn on the system, and we're booting. So it's gonna take a minute because it's AMD and it's the first boot with this CPU and this RAM config. So what I'll demonstrate right now in sort of real time is like from test to teardown, right? So we all know Heaven is the absolute best solution for testing things, especially GPUs. Like, there's nothing better out there. And anyone that thinks otherwise is absolutely full of shit. Okay, so with that said, I can now see, right, my GPU temp is at 32.
Jeez.
33, 32. Don't forget, this is a 350 watt card, maybe with a slightly higher TDP because it's a custom card, but 3090s are 350 watt. I don't know if a 3090 can saturate this loop, if you want to know the truth. I don't think it can. It's literally at 33C. Memory's at 46, GPU hotspots at 46. So this is cool. So if I'm testing like a GPU water block, I can test the memory junction temp and all that. Any other sensors that might show. So like Astral cards have various temperature sensors for different spots of the board, different VRM temp. I think there's 3 or 4 VRM temps. So there's like 4 or 5 different memory spots that it can measure. Yeah, so it's only at 34.5C. Clearly, the air temp coming out of the box hasn't changed. It's like the same temp. We're good there. So I can also see DRAM temp. I don't care about any of that stuff. Let's do this now. CPU is currently at 51.2C while running this test. Now remember, this is all stock out of the box logic. I haven't gone in and locked anything down with the CPU, so it might be, AMD does really like to push the voltage at lower temperatures when the clock speeds are really high under a low load. because of the fact that it's for stability reasons. But if I go ahead and shut down the test, we can see right now the GPU is at 35.2 C, 32, 27, 20, 25, 24. Yeah, it's coming back down to ambient real quick because it's about 22 C ambient in this room. Usually the GPU will sit a degree or two above ambient. So that just shows you the capacity of this loop is exactly what I was hoping. Now, obviously for a 3090, 5090 would be another, obviously my kind of a litmus test to make sure that it's good enough, but I don't have another water. Actually, I do have another Astral, and the other block I took off. Oh, you know who else is sending me an Astral block, I think? Singularity. So we got stuff to test coming up. Anyway, let's test CPU here real quick. So we'll just do a Cinebench. Cinebench is not what I use for my stress testing for CPUs. It's too on-off. Every time it shuts off to restart the test, that's a lot of time for it to actually cool down. I want a solid load. So let's just kind of keep, shut up, Phil. Okay, so the CPU is currently at 30.4, 38C. Let's just see what it spikes up to here. Let's do a 10-minute run. It should go pretty damn near 75. Yeah, 85, 87, 89. CCD1 is at 91. This is normal, by the way, for a 7000 series CPU. Even on water, they like to push themselves really hard up to 95C. Like, that was something when the 7000 series first came out with the AM5, is I was like, holy crap, these CPUs are hot, 95C right out of the box, even with the AIO. And AMD was like, that's normal, it wants to go that high, but I need to do some lockdown tuning, that way I at least don't want it auto throttling and auto turning up boost clocks and stuff to always try and hit that peak. But I was just kind of curious right now what this would look like. The only thing I'm missing in here, in this loop, is any sort of a flow meter and a loop temperature sensor. So that's the only thing I might add in the future. And that's a pretty easy add, to be honest. But because I can add it in any one of these tubes here. So I can still leave the box intact, but I can have it on one of these, we'll call them a patch tube for lack of a better term. But then I can make sure that my loop water temp and stuff is always kind of like my normalization, if you will. You know how you kind of do a slight normalization for ambient temp? Like if the ambient temp is 2C higher than a previous test, you can actually adjust the temperature, normalize it by 2 degrees Celsius across the board. I would just want to make sure that the ambient temp in here is always at 22C, but that would give me an indicator of like, if things start looking funny, like if my flow is way down, then that might tell me a block is slightly clogged or something like that. So just a better indicator. But this board doesn't have, it has temperature probe inputs, which is fine. Like to have an inline temperature sensor into the motherboard, and it's a sensor that would show up here. I need to do my research and see if there's a flow meter that outputs like an RPM signal or something to a fan header. That way I can monitor that. So then I would just know like, okay, our loop is slowing down. It's another point of data to say, hey, this block is more restrictive than other blocks. And that matters because then it starts to have an impact on your flow rate, has an impact on your pressure, on your pump, and wear and tear on the pump. If the pump's having to move through a lot of pressure, that's gonna add more wear and tear to your pump. So stuff like that I wanna be able to check. But you see how it's just locked at like 90C right now, 90.9, 90.1? That's by design. So I need to lock down that system. I think I'm honestly gonna upgrade it though to a 9950X, just because I feel like there's more control, but this is just what I have for now. All right, let's shut it down and see how quick the temps drop. Yeah, see how fast they come down? That's clearly just the chip and not the loop, right? And not the block for sure. The Optimus block that's on there has way more than enough mass to make sure we're pulling that heat away. Okay, so let's talk about done and tear down. So let's say I was done with my testing. I've got all my data saved. I got it uploaded to our server, shut down. Okay, that's off. Take that off. So we've got our CPU right there, GPU off. Right there, unplug that, doop, doop. That's pretty nice. Those VRMs are hot. I might get a gooseneck fan or something to point down at the, because there's literally no airflow over any of these heat sinks on here. It's also a brand new board, so I can smell it all getting hot for the first time. So yeah, I need to get a fan mount. Actually, I've got one right here. Yeah, I need to mount a fan to this to blow across it, because that's just gonna be for longevity health of the VRM. That will also help with some of the CPU overall power draw and such. There you go. I have wanted to do this for years. I don't know what I was waiting for to do that. I guess I was just waiting to be less lazy and want to do more of this testing and actually find a way to enjoy it. I find it quite therapeutic now, sitting here for hours and hours doing loops after loop after loop of different tests and finding nuances and characteristics of things. To give you an idea of how long I wanted to do this, I was still recording out of my garage at home when I had an idea of doing this. But I was gonna have like a cart, like it was gonna be on a cart that I could wheel around. I had to have things that were modular and can move around there. But cool, I'm excited for this. This can literally just live here. And that's the other thing too. This is now fully, you know, if I ever needed to use this for something else here, you know, this is now fully able to move too. Like it's not attached to anything. I'm excited. What a time to do this when people hate water cooling more than ever. But I don't hate it. I love it. So I'm gonna do it. I don't care what you think. It's my channel. I enjoy this. Some of you do, and I'll do it for you guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.